So what's in the bag?
That's a nasty looking finger, lady.
You got the bait?
What? No.
Yeah, I got your fertilizer. We made you.
Welcome back, interweb friends. Hollywood makes movies, and we talk about them. Welcome to Stop the Movie I Want to Get Out. This is a different episode, I think, for us. This was going to be a different episode anyway. But I'm going to do a little precursor on this one. A couple of times in the past, we have had a actor or a key figure on a movie pass away shortly before we were about to do the movie on the show. I'm not going to give all those away because some of them we saved. And as we had chosen this movie and we were in the midst of watching it when we learned that Meat Loaf had passed away. So, but this is a little different. And as people who listen to the show know, we make fun of movies. But as we were watching this movie, I think for most of us, there was something different in that we are probably going to make fun of this movie, but I know several other people did too, really liked Meat Loaf in this. And I thought Meat Loaf was one of the best things in this movie. So we decided to go ahead with it in part because I know a couple of us at least really wanted to talk about how much we enjoyed Meat Loaf in this movie and how much undeniably how much presence he has. Like your eye is just drawn to him when he's on the screen. While there is a lot of crazy stuff in this movie, I think a lot of how much I liked it is a tribute to how funny Meat Loaf can be and the kind of presence he had. So I'd let everybody else chime in, let other people chime in. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think this is different in that I wouldn't want to move forward with this if we were going to be making fun of Meat Loaf's performance, but I don't think that's really what we want to do. I think that there is stuff to talk about in this movie, no question, but I wanted to say up front that I and I think everyone else really liked and respected Meat Loaf in this movie.
Yeah.
Pretty fair. I mean, Cody, I'll introduce everybody one at a time. Cody Wolf.
Hello.
What do you think? I mean, is that a fair way to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always liked Meat Loaf, like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I forgot even he was in Fight Club. I haven't seen Fight Club in a while, but he's Bob in Fight Club. But especially Meat Loaf this era, I think is fun, and he made the movie definitely. It was funny because I was watching it Thursday night, the first half of it, and I was like thinking about buying the DVD and I actually had the thought like it's probably not something I would watch a lot, but I'd pull it out like when Meat Loaf died, I would pull it out and watch it or whatever. And then I woke up the next morning and Meat Loaf was dead. I was like, oh Jesus. And I can't find the movie now. It's like everyone bought every copy now on eBay and I can't find it. But
the ghost of Meat Loaf is like, yeah, you should have bought the DVD code.
I was this close to doing it, but no, like I am one of the ones who enjoyed the movie a lot, and it's my kind of movie, and he was definitely a reason that I enjoyed it. So him and Alice Cooper, of course.
Yep. And Christy Smorrell.
This movie both grew on me and continued to annoy me in separate ways as I watched it. I actually watched the entire thing before finding out Meat Loaf had died, but I do think he is undeniably the best part of the movie. I mean, maybe the vast amount of cameos just for the fun of that, but I think that you're right, he has an incredible presence. I think he is clearly giving 110%, and he makes the role. It's an insane role, but he makes it work.
That's a really good point. I mean, he is so committed to this. And this movie is crazy, as we're going to get into, but he is fully committed to it and going for it, which is like, I could see a lot of other actors phoning it in. And he's like, nope, I am here for this movie. I'm going to do whatever this movie wants me to do in an effort to make it work. It's I agree. Brian Mueller.
Yeah, in the long list of things that were atrociously incorrect about this movie, Meat Loaf is definitely not on them. It kind of his performance, I would equate it to like a Damian Lillard on like a really bad Trailblazers team who puts up like 35, but his team still loses because he doesn't have enough help around him. That was kind of Meat Loaf in this one. The director, the producers, the script really failed him, but he somehow was able to put up a pretty good performance. So yeah, he was not an issue in one of the many of this movie.
And you're right, like everything around him. Well, I like some of the supporting actors, but in terms of like, you're right, like the structure and the behind the scenes stuff, everything is failing around him. And at times it feels like he is carrying this movie on his shoulders, being like, I am going to power through and make this movie watchable. Like, it's wild. Jack Estabrook.
I gotta get this unmuted. Hello.
W. Redfish in here.
We gotta fix my audio
Jack.
problems. Hello. I'm not shocked at all about Meat Loaf's presence in this movie because he was always a fantastic performer and a powerful presence. I was disappointed that we didn't get to see his musical side in this movie. There's one scene that was probably, in my opinion, one of like the 3 good scenes in the movie where he is on stage and he's sort of doing the Meat Loaf thing. And it made me smile. But beyond that, I think he's always been a good talent. And he could be, as Alex might say, you could hand him the phone book and he'd read it and it would sound good because he just had this way of performing. He seemed to enjoy performing regardless of what it was. And as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, that shows through. And I get the sense that Meat Loaf was just having a ball because I'm on a stage, I'm performing, and he was going through it as opposed to I'm here for my paycheck. Yeah, whatever. Right. So I appreciated that.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And again, I think it is worth noting, like for people who haven't seen this movie, who are going to hear us talk through it, buckle up. This is nuts. I was trying to describe this movie to a coworker yesterday and I found it impossible. You cannot just there is not, if I actually gave the plot, it sounded like a horror film, but and because it's also like nonsensical. So,
especially the very end.
The very end is really something, which maybe is better. Well, when we get there, I was like, oh God, I was so scared of where the ending was going. And then what they actually did was at least not where I thought it was going. So, I think it was. I lost half of my notes. I left half of my notes at the office on this movie, so I'm doing this from memory.
Pretty logical plot. Should be easy to.
Yeah, pretty straight. It's pretty tight. This is like a this is right up there.
Macbeth structure.
The movie starts with, we're kind of introduced to this, what I could only describe as like a family. It looks like the family that has inspired Rob Zombie's entire worldview of this wild dynamic in Texas of Art Carney, who's playing a steampunk inventor, and Meat Loaf, who is some kind of delivery driver, and his best friend, who's his co-pilot, and a woman who I went a lot of the movie not understanding who she was, but I later, it's later determined she's her sister, that she's Meat Loaf's sister.
Now, this is the only stuff in this movie that I didn't enjoy. This stuff I felt was totally superfluous. I mean, it just didn't have anything to do with anything until the end. It kind of comes to me, not really.
Also, it didn't really match the.
Yeah, just the caricatures of the characters. I just didn't like any of it, and it was confusing. I don't know why they named the sister Alice when they had the whole movie was about Alice trying to get to meet Alice Cooper. I thought maybe that would come in somehow, some confusion or something, but it never did.
That character just annoyed me so much because, I mean, I think we should also say we all watched this on YouTube, so the quality was not
horrendous,
existent. So I think every scene she was in, she had something on her face, which got distracting too. And she's always screaming and just an awful character.
Well, the Art Carney family seems like they're from another movie. It genuinely feels like there's all of a sudden this clockwork nonsense with levers and screens and things moving. There's sort of this, it's not a great comparison, but I can't really find any other way to describe it. Sort of like a Benny Hill-ish kind of slapstick comedy thing about it. And I thought it was to try to spice up what was predominantly just we're driving because shooting inside the RV is cheap movie. And it was just, the rest of the movie is not this move the lever, pull the lever, the big accordion thing moves, the telephone booth moves, it has nothing, things almost move in like a higher speed. Oh no, and everyone like, and I'm like, why? The rest of the movie isn't like that.
Well, if I was wondering if it was like to pad it out, but the movie's an hour and 45 minutes long, so I don't think you would have to pad it out. But it felt like that, like some reshoots or something added into for somehow, I don't know, padded or something.
I mean, to remind the audience that he has a family was important to his emotional journey, I guess.
Sure,
but there are other ways you could have done that. Like every time he's alone, he calls his dad. That makes sense. But did they have to be like the Pee Wee Herman show?
Right.
The only thing I figured was that it was supposed to be like why he's an amazing mechanic, because his dad is like that, and everything works if you let it, and the crazy stuff, all the different machines in the house. Like I just figured that was supposed to be giving you the background of why he can fix everything.
I guess. Yeah. I didn't think of that, but yeah, that's probably true.
It also didn't do me like just like a cutaway. Like they wanted to use it as like, oh, we need to be able to like break up the road trip segments of the movie, so we can always just like cut back to this crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
but if it was the beginning and the end of the movie, then it was okay. But they kept cutting back to it, so it just felt like, hey, let's take a break from the movie to watch this skit for a second.
Yes. So he goes out there. He and his friend BB are doing they're making deliveries in a Shiner beer truck, and we get a bizarre sequence of Meat Loaf dancing in the cab of a truck, which is the point when I was like, oh, there's an uncredited third writer on this film. And that writer is a giant bag of cocaine, because this movie is like everything about. I was reading an interview with Alice Cooper, who shows up later in this movie, and Alice Cooper was specifically talking about this era of movie making in LA, and he described it as a blizzard of cocaine. And I was like, yup, it is coming through loud and clear in this movie.
No snow, no show. And it's funny though, because it's like this is like I was saying in our chat, this is like the height of Alice Cooper's cocaine use himself. And this is something he didn't even admit until a few years ago. He was always like, oh yeah, I was a huge alcoholic, but never admitted he was doing drugs until recently. So now it's like, oh yeah, he was huge into cocaine at this time. And you can tell because that's why he's so skinny and kind of gaunt in this movie.
And so much of this movie, if you try to describe it, and I was doing this yesterday, trying to describe it to a coworker, it sounds like you're high trying to describe it. And like, it's like, well, Meat Loaf's dancing like a maniac in the front of a cab in a delivery truck, and they drive by an RV, and there's a girl, and she's pretty, and he slams on the brake, and you're like, what? Like,
See, for me, my reaction to that was the opposite. I thought, okay, so he's a happy kind of redneck dancing around, and he saw a pretty girl and he stopped the truck. So I think this is where in the chats I felt there was kind of a disconnect. I didn't necessarily think this was crazy. I think it was crazy in concept, in my opinion. But in execution, I was like, okay, well, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. He's dancing. That's a very simple way to establish that character. Oh, look, he also only cares about himself, but then he sees the pretty girl and he decides to stop, which says, okay, this is his character. And then they kind of slammed on the brakes, and it was kind of like a whoa, kind of zany, kind of we're trying to be funny kind of way, and it wasn't landing. So I was like watching it like, what? Like this is my face. No one can see it, but it's this deadpan as I was watching the movie. Because for me, for something that's so like apparently like cocaine fueled and nuts, it was extraordinarily dry and boring. And every now and then it was trying to be wild, but everything was done on master shots, and it was I don't know, it was just very dry. And all
I would actually agree with you, Jack. I think that's where to me the coke influence came in, because it's like a comedy that isn't really funny, and it's like a comedy that isn't even trying to do jokes. It's just a lot of what's happening is so weird. And
yeah, it is weird. Yeah. I would say that. Certainly later on with his brain stuff. But that also seemed like to break it up. Well, we'll get to it when we get to it.
We'll get there, yeah. So he sees a very pretty girl in this broken down RV and gets out and agrees to try to help them get the RV back on the road. And he's like climbing under the truck, and the girl's climbing under the truck, and she's being very flirtatious with him. I would also like to bring up, we were talking about this a little bit before. I'm was truly shocked as we got into this movie of we were talking before how this movie fails the Bechdel test and that there is never a scene where two women talk about anything other than a man.
It never even sits down to take the test. It's still like at home sleeping. It never made a test.
Did they two women speak in the movie?
Yeah,
I think that technically Lola and Blondie speak as they're fighting over Travis.
Right.
And I think that's it.
That's the only time I think two women talk to each other. Yeah, it's insane.
And the cat fight in the bar.
Well, yeah, unless you count the bar fight. Yeah.
And a bar fight. And the only agency that either his sister or Lola have in this movie at any point is their romantic interest in men. Like they are given there's nothing else that defines their character, like not a thing. And it's
the way that they're presented, I would say they're, visually defined incredibly different. The first time we see Alice, she's got like a mud mask on. She's got her hair up in curlers in a net. She's still in her pajamas. I mean, like everything you can do to make a woman look quote unquote ugly in a movie. And the first time we see Lola, she's literally wearing underwear and the camera is very close up on some gratuitous shots. So they are presented as two complete polar opposites. And there's never anything in between in this movie.
Right.
I mean, Debbie Harry is the closest that they even get to just like a female person.
Right. Well, a person, because that's true. Debbie Harry seems to have some kind, I love Debbie Harry, and she seems to have some kind of agency to her character that is something going on. And that scene with her is really actually one of the more fun scenes, but like, whew, boy. The characters of the sister and Lola, it was rough. Even by like 1980s, early 70s and 80s standards, it was like, this is.
As I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, this was end of the 70s very clearly.
Yeah.
And then to find out later on that, I know this comes later, I'm jumping, but that she's 16. She's supposed to be 16 in this movie, and that's how she's treated. That is a whole other level of problematic.
Yeah. That's where I was like, what happened with, I'm like, they say like, write what you know. And this has happened a couple of times on movies we've done where I'm like,
God, what do they know? What do they know?
Into the writers of this movie. Because if
I feel like they're following what they want.
I think that
which is scary.
Not to defend it, especially because it's 16, but in this time period, there were women who, girls who this was their pursuit in life was to sleep with as many rock stars as they could. Like that's like I want to say realistic, but there was an actual thing. Like yeah.
It's kind of like, because this is like a crazy, almost famous. This is like a weird relative of Almost Famous and the Kate Hudson character in Almost Famous, except somehow more problematic and like.
Well, I think
Kate Hudson is trying to like lie about her age, and she's aware that this is like a problem, whereas Lola's like, it's right out there, and like, all the other characters in this movie are like, great, cool.
But not only that, it's Travis starts to develop this affection for her, and it could have been like this sweet thing, and then he's just looking to get with her too.
Right.
But, at least he did act shocked when he found out she was 16.
He did.
And he doesn't ever really. Well, he does that.
He does try to get it.
Yeah, it doesn't stop him.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And it makes the sweet, tender moments just creepy. It makes those uncomfortable. Yeah, it makes them creepy. Where if they just had left her age out,
I don't know.
Actress isn't 16. I would hope.
I don't know why they put that. That was a weird choice to put that in.
I don't know why it's in there because it doesn't affect the movie. Like it doesn't.
Not really.
Yeah, there's never any consequences to the fact that she's 16. There's never any parent coming to get her or something like that.
She has that moment where this is not for me, and she runs away. She has that turn that this is, and then she goes back to like a quote normal life or a more healthy life for someone her age.
Yeah, but she could have been 18.
Yeah.
It would have, and it wouldn't have. Yeah, they did it for the jailbait.
The film wouldn't change. Yeah. The film wouldn't change at all at her age, even not been mentioned, and we just would assume that she was 18.
I'm just glad Alice Cooper wasn't trying to get with her.
I know.
Oh no, he was pretty classy in the movie.
I enjoyed him. Yeah.
It's also weird because, and I looked this up, the actress playing Lola is like 25. So I was like, I don't know why, like, it was just a weird thing to put in.
Well, if it were a joke, if this were actually like a successful slapstick comedy that was like all the guys are into this girl and then the I'm 16, nope, they like back away. And then like every 5 minutes, like a guy tries to go for her and she says her age and they like back away and somehow they make like a pervy, but a joke about it and nothing happens. And the joke is, oh no, right? Yeah, not, you know.
I
think that may have worked.
I was honestly expecting at the end for her to say to Meat Loaf, like, I'm not actually 16. I was just messing with you or something like that. Like to make it like, okay, they can be together now, but they didn't do that.
No.
Yeah. You're right. It basically comes down to there's like one scene where Meat Loaf's like, oh man, oh, you're 16. Oh, that's terrible. Cut to the next scene. He's just back to hitting on her.
Yeah. He's like smashing a TV because he can't get laid.
Yeah, you had like a 5-minute like crisis of conscience, and then he's like, "All right, I'm past that."
And when it starts, when she's like helping him fix it, he's like totally entranced as she's climbing under the RV next to him. And I'm surprised I thought they were going for a joke of like he couldn't fix it because he was so distracted by her, but he can fix everything.
I didn't even catch the scene. I didn't even catch that he fixed it because later on he makes these crazy contraptions. When in this case, he just kind of like flirts with the girl, and all of a sudden the RV works.
They were underneath it, and he was tinkering, and then
and they drove it away.
Then he drove.
So they convince him. So they
need him because he's handy. Yeah,
he's handy, and they convince him that they need him to be to drive them. So they have a driver. Their car is fixed, and they have a driver, but they're like, no, we need you to drive us to. I forget where they're going in the first part of this.
I think this is LA, or no, they're going to Austin, Texas.
They're in Texas, but they're going to another place in Texas.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the
Texas is huge. It could take you like 8 hours to drive across it.
They're with the Hank Williams Jr. band, and they're on their way.
Our first celebrity cameo.
But I think they asked him to drive because they're like, in case the van breaks down again, we want you with us so you can fix it again. I think that's why they did it. But
I think that's why.
I think also because they mentioned that it was like he mentioned it was an automatic transmission, and then he got that stick and put it in, and they changed it to like manual. So I think no one else knew how to drive that
stick.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Brian. I was trying to figure out what was going on there. So the movie is telling us that while working under it, Meat Loaf changed it from an automatic to a manual transmission.
And
that's what he did.
And like
he has superpowers.
That's okay. That's incredible. So he drives them to the show, which and I was going to say, Brian, as a guy who's lived in Oklahoma, who's lived, in that region of the country, I don't know if this accurately reflects how concerts are held, but I was like, there's a lot of managers and people in like Hank Williams Jr. is basically performing at a small roadside bar. I was like, is this like, do you even really need like a tour manager? Do you need groupie? Like, it feels like this really could be like a 2-man operation at this point.
Yeah, I think that the quality of entertainment at some of those Texas bars far surpassed anything I saw in Oklahoma.
So they get to this bar, and again, I'm doing this off of memory without my notes, but they're like, oh, we're never going to be able to get the show set up in time, right?
Yeah. So they're 2 hours late to the bar because they broke down. And this guy, I can't remember, it was like Mohammed or something like that. He's like what do you call it?
Don King.
Yeah, basically. He put together like
he's a promoter.
Yeah. So he's a promoter. He's put together already this like circus of whatever, and he's promoting this show, and he gets on the tour manager, and he's like, if you're not set up in 10 minutes, I'm going to kill your career or something like that.
He's going to rape his career.
He says something a little more problematic, but I was trying to avoid that, Jack. Thanks. And
the French.
Let's call the movie out for what it is.
The French subtitles that we were watching on this YouTube link did say "kill your career."
Yeah.
So they apparently decided to be a little cleaner.
Yeah. So he's basically like, yeah, you got to set this up in 10 minutes, and the guy's like, there's no way we can get this up in 10 minutes. It's impossible. And then I can't remember who basically puts it on Meat Loaf, but someone says like, you take care of it. And he does it in 10 minutes. Everyone, and the Mohammed guy is impressed with him. And I did like the running joke where he like never says his name right.
I read everything but fish. Yeah.
Like red head, red horse, red,
red bone. I liked that. That was a good runner they had going.
It was arguably the only jokes in the movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
But so he gets the show set up and everyone appreciates it. And then Hank Williams Jr. plays in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And
Roy Orbison is there for some reason.
Roy Orbison's there, yeah.
Did you guys notice the little Roy Orbison Easter egg in there at one point?
It was what
it was a sound effect.
No.
Oh, there was
When they first walk in and like you see the first shot of Roy Orbison, which was really brief, and the Lola girl is walking by, he does the little like purr thing from Pretty Woman.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
That was my favorite part of the movie. 20 minutes in.
This is one of the few scenes that I liked in the movie. Like I really was not enjoying this movie at all. I was very bored. But when I saw like, oh wow, well, it was kind of cool. They got Hank Williams Jr. and I'm definitely not a country fan, but respect. And then they got Roy Orbison up there, and I was like, oh, they do this little duet. That's really cool. But the scenario around which I'm assuming we're going to talk about, that required them to feel the need to do the duet, I was just like, what? But it was nice that they did. I thought that was kind of
a nice moment.
Yeah.
It's weird because the movie is kind of putting forward that Redfish, the Meat Loaf character, doesn't really know who any of these music stars are, doesn't really know what a groupie is, doesn't thinks that Lola is beautiful, but is like not really understanding why she's like trying to get Roy Orbison's attention, or I think I don't know if Alice Cooper has been brought up at this point or not.
It has.
I think he had.
Who Redfish had never heard of Alice Cooper. He's like totally out of this, which is different than what I expected from the movie. And I kind of liked it that he was a guy who's completely out of this world, out of the rock and roll, music world. And then he gets brought into it and he like doesn't know any of this stuff and is totally oblivious.
That's actually what I thought the point of that chair, the dancing in the front of the truck in his chair. The point of that scene was that he's a country music fan and therefore knows nothing about all these rock and roll stars or rock and roll tours and things like that.
He did say in that scene where he's like, who's that? And he's like, oh, it's Hank Williams Jr. He's like, oh, I loved his daddy's music or something like that.
Yeah.
I heard of his father, but not him.
Yeah. So at this point, I think Lola is like, hey, there's Roy Orbison. So she's grabbing the beer to bring it over to Roy Orbison.
Right.
And Meat Loaf is like, hey, where are you going with that beer? And it ends up with the two of them like sort of like struggling over the beer and pouring it over the head of a lady, which kind of kicks off the next sequence of events. Eventually, like a bar fight, like a true like old school Western bar fight, like kind of it breaks out with like a lot of lines. Like there's guys like, look at that cat fight. And I was like,
because somehow every girl bumps into another girl and like ruins her dress or ruins her hair, and it just like this long train of girls that then fight. So the guys love it.
Yep. And Hank Williams is this where Hank Williams and Roy Orbison like sing that song?
They're gonna break up the fight.
Yeah.
So they decide to do an impromptu duet, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just because of who it is, just because of the performance, right?
Yeah. So they sing and it calms everyone down. But then the guy whose girlfriend or wife or whoever it was who got the beer spilled on her, like yells for Redfish, and like everyone like, oh, again, and
the crowd parts.
Yeah, and Hank Williams is like, screw this, and he stops playing, and yeah, so the crowd parts, and they like duel style, like are facing off against each other, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen here. Like, what are they doing?
I will say I did not expect this. I will say that.
Yeah, I did not expect like headbutting, like rams.
Yeah, they run together and well, it's funny because one of the guys like says to Meat Loaf, he's like, oh, you don't want to mess with him. He's got like the thickest neck in Texas or something like that. I'm like, what are they going to do? So they run together and like headbutt, and he like knocks the guy out or whatever. But then he's all messed up himself, Meat Loaf.
Now it was Meat Loaf. Now this is something weird here. So at the beginning of the movie, near the beginning of the movie, Lola says she's got some kind of sixth sense where she knew she would meet Travis Redfish. Then Travis Redfish headbutts the guy in the bar, and all of a sudden it's like wide angle lens, and he's hearing voices, and he keeps reciting these bizarre nonsensical fortune cookie type things. And then his buddy says, "Oh, he'll just drink a bunch of beer and this clears up." Like this is something that happens.
They call
brain
it
lock.
brain lock. Yeah.
So I didn't know if
Now-
all this tied into that end scene that
No,
we're not going to
nowadays
talk
they
about
just
yet.
Call it a concussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Just him banging his head and being like out of it for a couple hours.
But it seemed like they put too much emphasis on it where it wasn't funny, where I thought it was going to be a thing that was going to come back later, and it only came back later in other situations that were similar to this, and they handled it in the same way.
the Wikipedia
Right? So-
page, I don't know, I didn't catch this. The Wikipedia page for this movie claims that the brain lock that occurs is connected to a war injury that Meat Loaf's character had. And that this like is a thing that happens to him from time to time. So it's like
They never say
they're
that.
like
They never say it, not
conflating,
that I caught.
traumatic stress and like a traumatic brain injury.
Right.
I guess post-traumatic brain injury. I don't
If he had hit his head and then started like flashing back to like Vietnam or something, then it's one thing. But he's like saying like, who would win in a fight between a can of deodorant and whoever? And it's like
he's talking about like Mamie Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
which I thought was fun. I thought it was funny because it was like just so
It's
bizarre.
funny. It's so bizarre that it's sort of funny. Like
Because then he's just for the rest of this night or whatever, he's just out of his mind. And for some reason, they want him to drive the limo back to the airport with I can't remember the band or whoever it was.
With a full pitcher of beer. Like again, this was quite a while ago. Like, here, I'll hold your beer while you drive.
Yeah.
And he just like, he gets in the car, he just like loses his mind. He's just like, and just takes off. And on a police chase, there's a police chase breaks out.
When he screamed before taking off, I laughed out loud so hard. I was like, I don't know what is going on, but like, what an insane choice. And
Right.
it was funny.
Yeah. And then they have this police chase where they do like a Scooby-Doo thing where it's like a wide shot of like a street, looking down a street and all these parallel streets or perpendicular streets. And like you see the cars drive by, chasing him one way and then come down another street, chasing him another way where like he's in front. And they do like the whole weird Scooby-Doo thing for like a solid minute and a half, it feels like.
And the beer truck is there too, because his friend B is like, oh no, brain lock. I gotta help him.
He needs more beer.
And he ends up driving the limo directly into a plane.
Yeah.
Like
This was a move straight out of Grand Theft Auto 3.
it was. I thought about that.
I was honestly thinking that because I've been playing Grand Theft Auto 5 recently, and during the scene, I was like, this is a Grand Theft Auto scene. Just driving, the police chasing you, drive into an airplane, and the plane takes off. Yeah.
I thought Fast and the Furious,
Wow.
they would just have a nicer car.
I was just reminded of the Blues Brothers, which is a better movie. And once again, I turned my brain off and was like, during this entire sequence.
You had brain off?
Yeah.
Yep. I had brain off instead of brain lock. I was like, okay, whatever. Like, now they're doing the Scooby-Doo thing. Like that was kind of my reaction as this was going on. I take it I'm the minority in this group of this opinion, but I was like, because it was okay a little bit in the bar. And then once he got the brain lock, I was like, I'm lost again. I don't care anymore. And I kept watching it.
Can I just say I watched a really bad like faux Bigfoot documentary with Jack, and he loved that.
Because that
Which is so bad.
was amazing.
But
And we're going to watch it for this podcast. I'm going to make you watch it.
So
That movie was great. This movie was a dry, this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And I'm like, where's Alice Cooper? I was promised Alice Cooper. Why is Meat Loaf not singing? Like, what's going on? What am I doing here? That was whereas the Bigfoot documentary is a masterpiece.
we'll talk about that.
The Legend of Bigfoot is a masterpiece. You will not.
So they get on this plane, and the plane takes off. They get away from the police, and then I guess that's when they end up in California.
Yeah.
And Meat Loaf wakes up and he's like, "Where am I? What happened?" And they just convince him to keep roadieing, I guess.
Well, she kind of, again, this is where like this movie is problematic. Like Lola really manipulates Meat Loaf into continuing to roadie for them and like kind of like emotionally like blackmailing him.
There's this concept. There's this concept she keeps bringing up, the promises or the pleases like I'm only going to say please so many times, and it's like implied that she's going to do something inappropriate, and that's
Well,
the saying please.
Yeah, the first one was, I have 12 ways to say please. And I was like, oh, good.
Yeah,
Lord.
that's it. Yep.
But then in LA, she says, and she says please 3 times then. And then in LA, she says she has 9 pleases left. So I think they like backtracked on that being a sexual joke.
Which was a smart move,
considering
I
she's
think.
16.
But yeah, very smart move. But I was confused as to why it was there because of the characters. Anyway, we've already covered that. But
and it's kind of fun. They're setting up for a show at the Whiskey A Go Go in LA, like legendary LA venue. I found this kind of funny, but then Lola's like, "Oh, we've got to go do an errand. We've got to like go do this laundry."
Yeah, this whole thing was set up weird. I didn't really understand what was going on until like halfway through what happened.
He was missing something.
Yeah.
Something was missing. Like something either didn't get shot or didn't get written, or
I think it was just edited in a weird order. It was strange.
Yes, I'll talk about that at the end. But Cody, you just brought up a great point.
So they go to the laundromat and I was trying to figure out what was going on, but Lola's like, there's something wrong with this laundry detergent.
Well, so when they get to the whiskey, she's like, we have to go do laundry for the band or whatever. I was like, oh, okay. So they keep talking about this box of Tide, like, oh, we have to make sure we get that box of Tide or whatever. And so they grab all the stuff and they go, and then it cuts to like the tour manager talking to some other person on with the tour, and he's talking about. It sounded like they were trying to set up Meat Loaf.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
They're like, oh, I put the cocaine in this Tide, but then that doesn't make any sense though, because they needed the coke.
They needed the coke. Well, you're right. You're right.
And there was never a situation where they needed to hide it.
No. I thought that was how they were hiding it to get it to the band.
It was, but
it was.
It sound like
there's no real reason why.
Well, for a second, I thought he was making it sound like they were trying to set up Meat Loaf to get arrested because like he was jealous of him or something. That's not what happened. I don't know where I got that from, but they had some weird conversation with it. It kind of sounded like that. So I think what happened was they told Lola to get this box of Tide and make sure it got to the band or whatever. And I think she interpreted that because she's like 16 and naive or whatever, as take this box of Tide, do the band's laundry, and then bring the band's laundry to them. So she brings this box of Tide, which is filled with coke, to this laundromat to do the laundry. And it's not working because it's cocaine and not laundry detergent.
Right. So the little old lady comes up and she does like the 80s TV show or movie thing where she like dips her finger in the coke and tastes it. And she's like, oh, Toledo. And this little old lady's like, hold on, I got to take this whole box here. You take my laundry detergent. That was like, come on, that was a funny bit. Like
I did like that bit.
I'll give you that. I'll grant you that.
No, this whole scene is so wacky, but I liked it. Because then the cops come in, because somehow the cops know that there's coke in this box of Tide. That's why I thought that they're trying to set Meat Loaf up.
I thought they were trying to set him up, because how else would the cops know to go in there and
I think
check
they
a
were.
box of Tide for cocaine?
I think we're trying to put way too much logic on this movie.
I know. But then he gets upset when the coke wasn't there, so it doesn't make sense if they were trying to get him arrested with coke. But anyways, so the cops come in. There's a whole like weird, goofy, slapsticky scene with the cops trying to. They're like, "Oh, you got coke in that box, or whatever." And he obviously gets the box. And
Basically, a who's on first act.
Yeah. It's just weird because Lola and Meat Loaf are having a separate conversation, and the cops. It's weird. You have to watch the scene to understand. I can't.
Yeah, because Lola and Meat Loaf are having a conversation about the revelation that she's a virgin. And the cops are talking about what they think is coke in the Tide box.
They start doing a who's on first bit with like, who's a virgin? No one's a virgin. There's no such thing as a virgin. What? What's in the Tide box? Who's in the Tide box? And I was just rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
And then leading up to the great bit where one of the cops, to test if what's in the Tide box is cocaine, he lays out like a full line and snorts it, which I'm like, wow, all right. If that's how the narc officers if that's how they're testing cocaine, their day is really interesting. But he's snorting a line of actual Tide because that's what they got from the little old lady who took the cocaine. But it's really unhinged, but there's like again, it's got that like 80s Coke energy to it where you're like, this doesn't work, but yet it does work somehow.
And then it never comes back. Like the
No.
police officer has to go to the hospital because he's now foaming at the mouth and nose from snorting soap. And they just drive away.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing. I mean, the
Yeah.
band gets mad that they don't have Coke, and that's the
Right.
most, like, the police are never come back, or there's never any further issue.
I really thought that would be like a reoccurring thing. Like the cops would keep coming in and trying to like arrest him and screwing up or whatever, but they just never come back.
Yeah.
And the guy who was jealous of Meat Loaf's character, right? He'd be a logical choice to be trying to get Meat Loaf in trouble so that he could get all the money and the praise from his boss instead of it coming to Meat Loaf. But they just don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Meat
storyline
Loaf
just kind of like fades away.
Well, he threatens him with physical violence. So I think he rightly was like, okay, this is a dumb idea. I'm not gonna keep doing that.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So they go to this,
like,
they go to this club, and this band is like, you don't have the cocaine, we're not playing. That was in the contract. If you don't have the cocaine, we're not playing. And he's like, basically like, he takes like a mic stand and like bends it in half. He's like, you're not playing, you should reconsider. And they're like, yeah, okay, we'll play. So then this scene gets wacky too. I'll let you go into it, but.
Well, we get into this weird, like, so Meat Loaf and Lola have an argument where he's on the stage with a microphone and she's out in the audience, and they have this sort of like call and respond. It's like,
I love this so much.
Musical number, but
I loved this so much. Like I was like, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say, like, for me, obviously, again, I didn't get the enjoyment out of this that everyone else did. But when he hit that stage, I was like, oh yeah, and I thought this is a really adorable little scene. Of course, if the character were 18, this would be a little bit more appropriate, but whatever, we have to play with what we got. But it's still, I was like, this is a cute little scene where they do this question and response thing with the band. You're gonna stay, I'm gonna go, no. And like the band is hitting the notes with him.
Yeah.
And I said, this is really kind of, why can't the movie be more like that? Right? With more moments like that, like let's have fun with music instead of it just being a music bed. Like let's have it be an integral character in the film. You got Meat Loaf, use him. You get that talent right there. And this is the only scene where they really do that. And I thought that was adorable. It's the best word I can use to explain it. I was like, that was a really cool scene. And I said, the text I sent, I think, was, this movie doesn't deserve a scene this good. Like this, it was from us. This is from this. I feel like this is the idea they had. And they said, let's write a movie around it. And they were like, yeah, sure. Okay. And then they waited to the last minute to write the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I really liked this scene a lot.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's this scene. I like this scene a lot, and it also doesn't fit with the rest of the movie. I mean, there's a lot of scenes in this movie that don't fit with the rest of the movie, but I agree with you. Like this works. This is kind of the quirky. If the whole movie was this kind of
Sense of
quirky,
humor was
that
good.
also would have been a lot of fun. I agree with you on that. And
This moment gave me Paradise by the Dashboard Light vibes.
Yes.
And I was expecting, not only was I expecting Meat Loaf to actually perform at some point, I was actually expecting more musical performances throughout this movie. People play, but they play for like a few seconds. I don't feel like there was ever any like full song from a band, even though the whole movie is about concerts.
And if they pay to get the artist in the movie, do they have to pay even more for the song? Maybe, but you already got them. Use them.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We do get a good chunk of like Debbie Harry singing Ring of Fire,
which was cool.
An Alice song, but you're right. There's not really like
it's little chunks of each performer instead of
like almost like what if Travis and his appropriately aged girlfriend were traveling across the country, and at every stop they go, these two people who are oblivious of all these celebrities they meet along the way, and then at the end of the movie they're down on their luck and all these famous musicians come and play songs to raise money for them or something. Maybe like that's more generic.
We Are the World moment?
Like Wayne's World 2?
Like Wayne's World 2. This could have been a proto Wayne's World 2. Would have been a better movie. Again, I'm reminded of better movies when I'm watching this movie.
Yeah, there was also a part of me that wondered at some point if Cameron Crowe saw this movie, saw the Lola character, and was like, there's something there in a different movie, and that like Almost Famous is his take on like, Yeah, I think I can do that in a different. I mean, because Almost Famous is based on Cameron Crowe's life, but there's the Kate Hudson character almost feels like a more mature and more interesting version of the Wilma Bougabass character from this wacky movie. What happened? I'm trying to remember what happens after that. Is this when they go back to the hotel and they get in the argument that
I think so.
and it ends up?
Yeah, I think that's what happens. I think the band plays the concert as they were supposed to, and Meat Loaf doesn't sing. And I was like, oh, so he's not going to sing. And then they go back to the hotel, and he's watching wrestling on TV, which later they show that Art Carney likes to do.
Yeah.
And this is the first time here's something I noted because I was waiting for it for so damn long. This is the first time we technically see Alice Cooper, and that she's got like an Alice Cooper poster on the wall.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't wait to meet Alice. And he has this meltdown, like, why the hell are you wanting to be with that guy, Alice? But without saying it, I want to be with you without saying it. And it gets uncomfortable. And then he breaks the TV, right? This whole scene.
Well,
Yeah, you're missing the part when he like pushes her down on the bed and is on top of her.
Yeah. They're good. They're palling around. I'm using quotes there.
Well, then that's what she says. She's like, "No, I'm saving myself for Alice.
I'm saving myself for a little foreplay." And she says, "I'm saving myself for Alice." Yep.
And then he loses it. Yeah.
Yep. You're right.
And which
just makes it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I liked this movie in general, but this scene I was like, this is a fictional movie and it's making me very uncomfortable. Like he's like wrestling. Like we know at this point Lola is 16 and he's like wrestling with her and like
he knows
himself on her, and I'm like, this is
it would have
the hero of our movie. Like
it would have felt better if A, she wasn't a child, and B, like maybe they had already known each other for a long time or had been dating, and then she got this obsession with wanting to be with Alice Cooper,
and he wants her back. Yeah,
he feels like he's losing her to this, but they just met. She's never really, I mean, she flirted with him, but she made it clear from the first.
It was like one of the first things she said was that she wants to be with Alice Cooper.
Yeah, not just that, but she wants to be like a famous groupie. So that means being with a lot of rock stars, and so she's never really had any. I mean, she's flirted with him, but not like romantic. There's not been like a romantic thing between them other than in his mind.
Yeah.
So that's why this scene felt even worse, was because it's like, you don't have that. You've never had sex with this girl. She's underage. She's, you're not dating. It just felt like a way overreaction for the situation.
Yes. For him to then be going outside and throwing a snack machine into the hotel pool.
Yes. Yep.
Because apparently he also has superhuman strength. I mean, the mic stand bending scene that Cody mentioned, and then like breaking the TV and throwing the thing. Yeah.
Which should have come in at some point where he's like carrying giant like speakers or something on his own. Like, I got to get this on the stage or something.
Sure.
They never really do that.
Maybe they never show us.
Pushing a tour bus out of a ditch or something.
Yeah, the tour bus gets things like that. I would love to see.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been fun. Is this the point then where he agrees to stay with them on tour? I'm trying to remember how we get to where Blondie enters the movie.
I think it's just the next stop on the tour.
Yeah, okay. I do not remember how they got from LA to New
all
York.
of a sudden this, then this. Yeah.
They have the scene where they get.
Well, they're Blondie first. He goes there. Then they go to New York after Blondie.
Brian? What are you saying, Brian?
They had that scene then where they go drink like tequila on a car hood outside the liquor store.
Oh, that's right.
They're saying hot women and ugly women and fat women and skinny women and rich women and poor women and look a woman. And I was like, what is going on here? This goes on for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then I think it just
not literally, but it felt like that.
Yeah. So I think they go from that. Then it's just like, oh, they're not on the next show on the tour, which is weird because I don't really understand the tour, I guess, because it's like, oh, this stop is Blondie and this stop is Hank Williams Jr. It's like
they're like the equipment on tour instead of the artist on tour.
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't really think of that till now, but because they're not on tour with Blondie.
No, I thought Hank Williams or anybody.
I thought from the beginning of the movie, it'd be like, oh, we're with Hank Williams Jr. And then like, oh, now he's on tour with Blondie because he's getting more and more famous. And then, oh, now he's on tour with Alice Cooper. But it doesn't
it's kind of like he's on tour with the promoter, which is weird. That's not how tours work.
Yeah, but they're independent contractors for every performer that they go work with.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. But so they get to this show, and it's Blondie, and it's like in a field somewhere, but like the local sheriff shuts down the power because they don't have the right permits or something to play a concert there.
Something like
No, it was
energy
something dumb.
conservation.
Yeah, it was that. It was like they were against touring because it was like too much emissions from tour buses or something. So they're trying to just end music altogether. It was something so dumb and kind of throwaway. So they shut down the power, and then Meat Loaf has to figure out a way to restore power to this to the stage for the show.
He basically has to be MacGyver, a MacGyver roadie. He can only
he calls his,
the
because here's
elements
where we
around
call
him.
his dad, and his sister and his friend are like getting it on in the retractable accordion phone booth, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then he calls them and he tells them, if you believe it, it'll work, or whatever the catchphrase of the movie is.
Everything works if you let it.
Everything works if you let it. And then
well, basically, then Meat Loaf
he makes solar power.
Well, it's not just solar power. It also involves. I actually have a friend of mine is working on a project to do this, to turn farm waste into energy through biocombustion. And I'm like, Meat Loaf in 1980 invented a biofermenter that would do like essentially Meat Loaf invented green energy. Like,
there was also like a windmill, and he talks about the power of the sun. So I think it was like every kind of energy he could find.
I had no idea what was happening. Yeah, but so he gets the show up and running, and he saved the day once again.
And so then,
so this is where he falls off the.
Well, there's also a funny scene where the members of Blondie are like, "Hey, somebody's got to kiss this roadie," and they like all of them are like pass on it. So Debbie Harry gives Redfish a kiss, and then Meat Loaf is getting a stink eye from Lola, and I'm like, "What is going on? Like, what is this toxic relationship that's happening?"
And they're trying to play it up like it's cozy and it's growing, but it is kind of toxic.
Yeah.
But he's because he's watching the show from like the top of one of the rises on the stage, and he's like looking down at her and she's looking back up him, and they give each other a stink eye. So at the end of the show, Mohammed, the promoter, comes out and he's like, "I just want to thank the one guy who made this all possible." He's like, Travis Redbone or whatever he calls him, and at the same time, like he like loses his hat or something, is like trying to catch his hat and just falls face head first into the stage, like correct through the stage.
It's so funny even thinking about it. This stunt is so ridiculous, and it's like it looked dangerous.
Yeah, it made me look like that was legitimately funny to me.
Yeah,
but then he gets the brain lock again.
Yep.
Yes.
And this is where then Debbie Harry has to like get him back to the hotel or something.
Yeah.
Why that job fell to Debbie Harry, I do not understand.
I know. How did that end up happening?
Because they needed another scene. She was under contract. She was on set. Why not?
Yeah.
Because they just sit at a bar for another 20 minutes. I was like, they could have narrowed this down.
I feel like this was prefaced on somebody just was like, okay, if we can get Meat Loaf in a limo with all the members of Blondie and Debbie Harry, and he's just saying like non sequitur stuff and they're reacting, it will be funny. And it kind of was, but it's like, what a weird way to get there.
Yeah.
You know, like how did we like that? Why how that was like essentially the storytelling like point that we needed to hit, I'm not sure. So I also loved when the promoter is like, that roadie has inspired me to run for president.
Yeah, I did think that I liked.
I mean, if
and then the other guy says, but I could be your campaign manager. I worked for Spiro Agnew.
Yeah, and that guy's like, no, Redfish. That guy can do anything.
But again, they were playing up that jealousy thing that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, oh, this doofy guy is jealous of Meat Loaf. Oh, okay.
Right. And at the same time, we should say Lola, we see all these shots of Lola going into different bands' trailers, but we don't really know what's going on.
I was very confused by that.
I was very confused. I was like,
she was either looking for Redfish or she was trying to groupie it up. I don't know.
I think they wanted you to think that she was like, screw it, I'm going to do this groupie thing because I'm upset that Travis is with a Blondie. So I'm going to do this. And at the end of the movie, she reveals that she hasn't done anything, which is, okay, that's fine. But I think that's what they were trying to get us to be like, oh no, she's going to sleep with all these people.
Because they did have to fight about that in a minute too.
Yeah, and she's trying to make Redfish jealous, but it's like, what? I don't know.
But he's not even there. So Travis Redfish is sitting at a concert or whatever in like a banquet hall with Blondie, and they're talking
At a salesman convention.
Yeah, and he's still kind of out of his mind. And then at one point, like, he comes to, and he realizes, he's like, "Oh, hey, you're that woman from I've seen on TV playing music or something. I saw you at the concert." And she's like, "Yeah." And then he starts another bar fight.
Well, yeah, because he was talking through the song.
I would watch that scene of Meat Loaf and Blondie. In fact, I know I'm going to watch that scene again. I think Debbie Harry is very, like, she's just very funny. Somehow that scene was perfect for me. It makes no sense. Like,
I really do like Debbie Harry in this movie. And it is, the scene is super strange, but she pulls it off.
Yeah.
And I laughed too because so Lola ends up coming in and starting a fight because he's sitting with Debbie Harry and she's jealous, I think. And so he like pulls her aside and they start fighting about, like, guys, you went in all these bands trailers and what were you doing? And they start fighting. I laughed because he starts picking up, like, there's just stacks of tires there.
Yeah.
And he starts picking
He does, yeah.
Throwing them back into like the concert hall or whatever it is. And that's like starts another brawl.
Well, at the same time, Blondie is starting like sort of like a food fight or like weird throwing things fight with a Little People band that like Lola had found.
That was called Snow White.
They were like Snow White. Yeah, I was like,
I was wondering if that was a real band or not.
They might be. I don't know.
Might have been. But also, this movie is so problematic. I was like, oh.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Was Debbie Harry, were we supposed to believe that she was like interested in Meat Loaf?
I got that vibe.
I don't know if she's interested. I mean, I think they kind of gave that vibe off, but I think it was just too, like, she respected him because he was this amazing roadie and he saved the show. And but I think she might have been a little into him too because he was like out of his mind, and it was kind of interesting. I don't know. It was such a weird.
Because when he leaves, she seems a little bummed. She's like, like, it's too bad. Yeah.
And then when the fight's going on, she just kind of sneaks out of the movie.
Yeah.
And then she's gone. So
and then the movie just makes like a hard pivot to
New York City.
Where it just kind of prefaces like, that Redfish and Lola, because Redfish is mad at Lola. So he just drove her to New York City in a bus to deliver her to Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Which somehow he's able to do. He's able to walk right in the venue. He's able to walk right on the stage.
Madison Square Garden security was very lax back then.
Yeah. And he's Travis Redfish, Jax.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows who Travis W. Redfish is.
Yeah.
So he's literally just bringing her he's like still pissed off at her for she won't stop talking about Alice Cooper. He's like, fine, I'm gonna bring in Alice Cooper and just give you to him, and this will be done. So he like goes all the way to New York, marches into the venue, onto the stage, and like finds Alice Cooper. He's like, here, she's here, take her, she's yours, and he's like gonna leave.
Yeah.
But now here's something I missed out, right? He gives, and now Alice Cooper, of course, is fantastic in this, and he's in it far too little. And he appears and he has this conversation with Travis, and I'm like, okay, so I'm seeing Meat Loaf and Alice Cooper, and they're sharing the screen together. This is cool, right? And he tells him, he says, he gives him a lecture. He says, do everything you promised to do with her.
So
now, was there something earlier in the movie that I missed where she was like in contact with him, and
I don't know if
he would?
Yeah, I'm not sure because I don't remember it, but they made it sound like she had
take her to dinner. What?
Like she had told Meat Loaf that basically like he had told her that they would be together or something. Like maybe they had been corresponding or something. But in my mind, that was just her like saying that and it didn't actually happen. Because at no point in this movie at no point in this movie is Alice Cooper actually, because he seems confused by this too. At no point is he actually like seeming interested in her. And his wife is in the movie too, like very briefly, but he's married and he has a wife. So it's like, I don't think at any point they would actually like he was actually like, oh, I'll sleep with you, Miss.
I think they're saying that like Meat Loaf is so naive that when Lola says this to him, he takes it as
maybe.
fact.
But I thought that Alice Cooper's reaction was one less of what the hell are you talking about, man, and more of okay.
I love
So
that.
it could have been, which I do love, but in my mind, I guess I wasn't thinking, oh, she totally lied to him and he's totally into it. I was more like, wait a minute, did he really know this girl?
I think Alice Cooper is so confused.
Kind of just going with it and saying whatever.
He's just like, I always keep my promises. Like, I think he has no idea what's going on, but he's like, I guess I'm just gonna roll with this. Yeah. Like, which
but he did take them to dinner.
He did. He brought the snake. He brought the snake.
He does, because so as Meat Loaf is storming away, and he's gonna leave Lola behind.
I love this where he snaps his fingers.
Because someone says, oh, I think Lola yells to him like, Travis Redfish. And Alice Cooper's like, Travis Redfish, because he's having all this problem with his sound system on the stage. So he like snaps fingers. He's like, security guards, whoever come in, he's like, get him. So they get him, and they're like, Alice wants to take you to dinner because he wants him to fix his sound system.
Yeah.
So then there's this weird negotiation scene with like him.
He wants a ticket.
Well, him and Alice Cooper, and Alice is like, oh, because he's like, oh, I got reservations ever, and Lola's like whispering to Meat Loaf, like, tell him he has to wear his makeup and tell him he has to wear his leather suit with the red cup on it and bring the snake.
The red cup comes with the leather. I like how he's kind of writing it down, all of his requests.
And Alice Cooper's like, oh, okay, whatever. And then it cuts to the dinner scene, and he's wearing like his makeup and his leather with the snake, and they're sitting in this nice restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the thing I was the least prepared for, but I loved the most, was Alice Cooper's willingness to show the difference between his real personality and his on-stage personality. Yeah. And that Alice Cooper is playing like him as an actual person, and who is like, you want me to wear like my costume to dinner? Like that was very entertaining. And I think that was sort of a bold choice, I'm guessing, in 1980 for Alice Cooper to sort of like pull back the curtain a little bit and be like, no, I'm just kind of this normal guy who then has this crazy on stage persona.
Right. Yeah. So I guess
he does not disappoint.
Yeah. But I think he convinces Redfish here to fix the sound system. I can't remember what the whole deal was, but
he said he'd buy him a tour bus. He said, I'll do it. All I care about is getting the hell out of here, getting away from Lola. Just all I want is a ticket back to Texas. And Alice Cooper's like, Jesus, man, I'll buy you a tour bus.
Yeah.
So that's what he does.
Yeah.
And somehow Travis fixes the sound with like potatoes and sardines.
Yes.
Creating some kind of like a bizarre, battery. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
how that fixes the sound system, but
which also then like sparks during the show. So like, I thought it was actually do a good, I thought it was going to like blow up, and he did.
Yeah. I thought something's going to come of that.
I guess it didn't. I guess it was just dangerous. But
in this part of my notes, I do have one where I'm like, did he just say potatoes? Like what? How is he fixing this?
Yeah.
He really was MacGyver before MacGyver.
Yeah. I also have a note at this point. Now I'm back on notes, and I'm like, we're an hour 30 into this movie, and I cannot tell you what the actual through storyline of this movie is.
Doesn't really have one.
Like, this movie has 15 minutes left. I do not know what the through plot really is. It's like a cool vibe, but it's like, there's not like a story here, which I guess is fine.
I didn't need a story. It was just a fun rock and roll movie. That's all I had.
Yeah. So he gets a call from his dad that his friend BB and his sister are getting married. So Redfish,
which, by the way, the only reason they're getting married is because the father kind of catches them like getting frisky
in a phone booth.
Yeah, and BB's like, why isn't he mad? He just caused basically having sex, and the sister's like, oh, because he knows that the only reason you would ever do that is if you were planning on marrying me. And BB's like, oh, and then they end up getting engaged, I guess, shortly after that. So
yeah, the father says that she finally tricked him into marrying her.
Yeah. So that's problematic too, but
yeah, not great.
Yeah.
And as he's like pulling out in the bus, and Lola's like yelling to him, she's like, Redfish, this is my dream. Like she wants him to stay and be like a roadie, I guess, for Alice Cooper, but he's like, no, I'm going back to Texas to this wedding. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, so is this the end of the movie, that the two of them realize that they're in like a toxic relationship and that they like have different goals in life? And I'm like, there's also
in a better movie, this would work, because I think everything, and I'm not just saying this because it's Alice Cooper, but by coincidence, from once they get to New York City, it becomes a movie, right?
Mhm.
And I'm digging it. But everything that's leading up to it is not what the movie that I've said I'm suddenly watching is built on. So there's this touching scene where he's in love with this girl, but she's got this devotion to being a groupie, and he's like, well, this is our moment. We're gonna, of course, she shouldn't be 16. That's one of those things that hurts this premise. But if this were done differently, everything from Alice Cooper on would basically be unchanged, in my opinion. If everything preceding it was 100% different, but got them to that same point, this could be a touching moment where it's like, well, are you going to stay? You're going to come with me? Yeah, I gotta go. And he closes the door and he drives away, and she's there.
Well,
and then when he goes to the wedding, she appears at the wedding, right? Like, it's cliche, but that's what ends up happening anyway.
I kind of liked it because it wasn't, are you going to stay or are you going to come with me? He was like, I'm going to Texas. And she's like, you can't ask me to come with you right now. He's like, I didn't ask you to come with me. It's like, I'm going to Texas. I'm not asking you to come with me. Like, this is done. And she's still like, but like, I have to stay here. And he's like, that's fine. I'm not telling you. I'm just telling you I'm going to Texas. And he leaves. But then she chases him to Texas. She quits her dream of sleeping with Alice Cooper to go to Texas and be with him.
We get this, like, the scene of the wedding is so weird because the wedding is going on. Redfish shows up. Everyone's like, Redfish is here. Yeah. And everyone's freaking out. He goes in to see his dad and he's like, hi, Dad, how's it going? He goes, pretty good. Hey, is that the phone? I'll get the phone. Okay, Dad. Oh, gotta go. I'm like, what? It's so rushed and weird.
Yeah, this was weird. Yeah.
And something's missing too, because Bird, that like other roadie, is at the wedding, and I'm like, what's he doing there? And like,
I didn't know.
You heard there was a party. That's all.
I was like, but like, what? Something got cut at some point, or maybe it didn't. And again, the co-writer of Cocaine was just like, I don't know, get that guy back in there. He's funny
for no reason.
But I was like, what? I was so confused. And he gets a call and he's like, I gotta go. And he goes and picks it. Lola is somewhere in Texas, I guess. And he goes and picks her up. And she's like, I didn't do it. I didn't sleep with Alice Cooper. And so then she and Meat Loaf are in this tour bus driving around. And I have it in my notes. I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm like, is this movie... Am I about to see a movie that ends with statutory rape? Because I'm like, I feel like that's all indications are where this movie is going.
That cliched ending.
Yeah, of a middle-aged man committing statutory rape in an emotionally manipulative and toxic relationship. But instead, Lola says, yeah, I'm not going to be a group anymore. I'm a psychic now. And I have a feeling something's going to happen.
Bringing back that throwaway line from the first scene she was in that has not been brought up since.
Yeah. And aliens descend on their tour bus.
You didn't think that's where the movie was going? I mean, I saw that as the logical end.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did breathe a sigh of relief, honestly. I was like, this is better than where I thought it was going. And she's like, I think these aliens need us to help them fix their ship. Let's go fix it together. And I was, I don't know. I don't know. I would love to hear what other people think. I was just like, okay. I mean, this is both insane and yet also feels like the fitting ending to this movie somehow. Like, sure, why not? Like, this could be the ending.
Yeah, I think what I was reading was that they were setting up a sequel where he would be on an alien ship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know how else they could have ended this. Like,
it reminded me of Life of Brian, I think it is, when like in the middle of like a chase, like foot chase scene.
It is.
All of a sudden these aliens like swoop in and he ends up on their ship for like a weird like minute and a half, and then it's just back to the rest of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought for a moment when she was when Lola was talking to Meat Loaf and she talked about them needing to repair the ship, and she was like, "They want you to repair their ship. In fact, I know they want you to repair their ship." I thought for a second like she was going to be an alien.
Oh,
There's like a brief moment where I'm like, is that how she's like clairvoyant and can like see things? Because she like predicted the earthquake that happened that we didn't talk about, but
And
at
she
one
would
point
be like, I'm not 16, I'm an alien.
yeah.
She could be 16 on a planet where it takes longer than an Earth year to go around the sun.
Yeah, she could be like,
Yeah, could be.
She
So,
could be
yeah,
like
she-
she could be like
she's-
47 Earth
yeah,
years,
she-
but
Yeah,
she's 16 Jupiter.
She's Mars 25.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
that would've been
right.
A little more tolerable.
that actually maybe would have been a better ending. Like that.
Maybe that would have been in the sequel.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe.
But we'll never know.
Something. Wow. All right, so let's do. I have a couple. I have a interesting "So Wrong It's Right," and Cody, I think you're going to have to sit this one out because I'm pretty sure you know this one.
I did no research on this.
So Alice Cooper was a very interesting guy, and Alice Cooper was very, very close friends with somebody that I think a lot of people would. When I learned this, I was pretty surprised. Like to the point where he would hang out with this person all the time and would invite them to his shows, was very close with them. Alice Cooper,
I already know the answer to this.
I think you might. Was Alice Cooper very close friends with either A, Charlie Chaplin, B, Bob Hope, or C, Groucho Marx? And I mean, they were very close. Like Alice Cooper used to literally like go over to this person's house in the middle of the night to watch movies and would sometimes like tuck them in and like lock this person's door.
Upon leaving.
Upon leaving.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
say
go
Bob
with.
Hope. I'm gonna say Bob Hope.
Bob Hope. Okay.
I was also gonna say Bob Hope.
That
'cause
sounds
of the
like
golf
it makes sense.
Bob Hope.
Okay, yeah, the golf, yeah.
I'm going to go
What do you
with
think?
Groucho.
Cody, do you want to reveal the answer?
It's Groucho.
It's
Groucho
Groucho, no
Marx.
kidding.
Groucho Marx and Alice Cooper were very close friends.
Nice.
Though I will say, Christy and Jack, you're not wrong in that Alice Cooper once got Groucho to bring Bob Hope to one of his shows. And Bob Hope went to an Alice Cooper show.
I wonder how they met each other. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they lived. Cody, tell me, you probably know more than I do. I believe they like lived very close to each other.
I don't remember, but probably. But like I was saying to Alex before the podcast, like Alice Cooper is very much into like old Hollywood, like the stuff he grew up on. So when he got famous, he became friends with like Groucho Marx and all these kind of people. Yeah. So
I think one of the other interesting, it's not really so interesting, right? But like Alan Rudolph, who made this movie, is a pretty respected filmmaker. Like this is like he's made a lot of movies. I mean, several of his films have Oscar nominations. This is kind of early in his career, but not that early. It's just a weird outlier in the career of a guy who made mostly kind of dramatic movies.
Was there some behind the scenes, like was the film rushed for some reason, or did someone else like take it and edit it without his know-how? Or
well, he did. It is fair to say that Alan Rudolph's career, I mean, I'll even read from his book.
Or this is early enough where he got better than as he made movies, maybe?
Well, he was pretty good early on too. He really liked eccentric characters and their relationships. That's of
what this movie is.
Of Alan Rudolph's films. So I suspect that that's maybe what drew him to this. He also was how do I put this? He was drawn to characters who had complicated interpersonal and sexual relationships, which seems to be playing with the themes of this movie as well. It's just really weird. I didn't realize that like Alan Rudolph directed this, and I was like, oh wow, but it kind of goes with the rest of his body of work. I don't know. We'll see. All right, let's do it. Is it so bad it's good? And then I have one line from a review that I think is a good way to end this show. Let's start with Brian. Is it so bad it's good? The only one of us who has spent extensive time in Texas or Oklahoma.
That wasn't the part of Texas or Oklahoma I spent time in, sadly, because that would have been a much more interesting time there if we were getting in bar fights every night. But and Roy Orbison was there to break it up. But I'm actually kind of in the camp with Jack here. I did not love this movie. I thought some moments were kind of interesting, and Meat Loaf really kind of, I think, made this somewhat watchable. Whereas if it was in the hands of a different lead, it would have been watching this for 20 minutes and see ya. But yeah, I don't think I would ever watch this again. It had its moments, but kind of like Jack, I was kind of found myself very bored at times, and the whole headlock thing kind of took me out of it at times. So it was not my favorite one we've done.
Fair. Okay. Christy, what do you think?
I'm going to go with, actually, yes, so bad it's good. I wish that I had been able to see it in better quality than YouTube with French subtitles. I may someday watch it again if I come across it in a better quality. Very, very, very problematic for many reasons, but also if you just give in to a mindless, zany, I want to say comedy, but to Jack's point, there weren't actually that many jokes. But if you just kind of take it for what it is, then yeah, I think it did grow on me. I watched it 30 minutes one night and then the rest of it the other night. And the first night I was dreading watching the rest of the movie. But by the time I got to the end, I was like, all right, that was stupid. But yeah, okay. I enjoyed it more than some of the others we watched.
Yeah. Jack, I'll let you. You've kind of spoiled your view on it, but
I think the word I would use is a slog. Like, it was very hard to get through this. Just the way it was paced, the way it was plotted, the things that were happening, the things they were that they thought were funny, that they were fixating on, and those moments of awesome. There was like maybe 3, and I was like, oh yeah, and I went back to being bad again. Like, I mean, boring bad. Like and I get why people would like it. I mean, Meat Loaf is great in it. I would argue Meat Loaf was great in anything, though, so it just shows his qualities. Regardless of what he's given, he's good, and Art Carney is in the movie for like 20 seconds, but he was good, and the musical performances were good, and it was cool to see Roy Orbison and Hank Williams Jr. sing together. It was obviously it's awesome to see Alice Cooper. Basically, once he appears in the movie, it becomes great. But everything else, I mean, I say shake it and like an hour falls out. If this were like a 45-minute like TV movie with that extra space for commercials, but with the commercials removed, it's like 42, 45 minutes. I probably would have enjoyed this a lot better. It just felt like I was climbing a mountain, and I was like, and there was no top, and I just kept going up and up and up and up and up and up, and my arms are getting tired, and everyone's like, you'll get there eventually, and there's no top to the mountain, guys. Like, it was really just not for me. So I will probably never watch this again unless I want to see if I can use it to teach myself French.
I'll go, and then I'll let our resident Alex Cooper superfan Cody go. I spoiled it in the chat up front, and in both our chat up front, and I kind of loved this movie. I think I definitely will watch it again. However, I will probably be applying the fast forward button pretty liberally, and I think the movie, once it gets to LA, gets a lot more fun. Like the stuff with Blondie and Debbie Harry and Alice Cooper, I loved that stuff. And I think I really just across the board, the Art Carney stuff and the stuff with the sister didn't really do it. That's sort of the low point of the movie, but the performances are fun. Again, the part is very problematic, but I liked the actress who played Lola, and there's something like there's something there too that I liked. I don't know, the weird vibe of this movie. I enjoyed it, and I think genuinely some of the stuff with Blondie and Alice Cooper is some of the most fun I've had watching a movie for this podcast in a long time, mixed in with a lot of total insanity, and Meat Loaf makes it possible.
I just want to say Robin Hood wasn't that long ago, and Robin Hood was super fun. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true. That is.
I'll continue my defense of Robin Hood.
Yeah, yeah. Robin Hood, a more consistent movie. I would give that. Cody, your thoughts?
I'm honestly upset that I didn't buy this on DVD for $10 on Thursday night, and that by Friday night you can't find it on the internet anywhere now for under like $75, because I do want to own this at some point. I honestly really loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I feel like it was made for a very specific kind of audience, and I'm kind of in that audience, I think. It's just kind of a fun, mindless rock and roll movie. I've always been aware of this movie because of Alice Cooper, and I've known of it. I've just never seen it until now. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I didn't think it was so bad it's good. I just thought it was good.
Yeah, it's fun.
For what it was. I mean, it's just, like I said, it's just a dumb, zany movie with some rock songs in it and rock stars and those my kind of thing. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I could respect that.
I think to bring this one to close and to recognize again how much presence and how much Meat Loaf brings to this, I want to read a section from People Magazine's review in 1980. And they say, as portrayed by rock-heavy Meat Loaf, Redfish is a pure delight, innocent and irresistible. In his first starring role, he doesn't sing a note and still steals the movie. I agree with that. It really, I like Meat Loaf. I think he's just a unique performer, and I think this movie should, as people kind of remember him, this movie plays an interesting role. I think it's the only movie where Meat Loaf had a starring role. He was a supporting character in a lot of other stuff. And to see a movie that's completely based on his presence and charisma is something pretty special.
Well, I do think he had an amazing performance. I have a little bit of a bone to pick with that review. Can you really steal the movie if you were the star of the movie?
I do agree. He is the star of the movie.
Yeah. I mean,
Good point.
Yeah, that's a fair. Considering the movie is built around him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you have some people who are pretty big rock stars at the time in the movie too. I mean, he's obviously was a rock star too. So yeah.
He's stealing the movie from the cameos.
Yeah.
It should be the other way around. I mean, I do think he is the best part of this movie. But if you're going to steal a movie, it would be like Debbie Harry stole the movie. Debbie Harry stole the scenes that she was in.
Yeah.
He like secured the movie. He didn't steal the movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kept everything at bay.
Yeah. He was the webbing, making sure nothing fell off the truck. Yeah. Yeah, this was an odd one. I mean, this is just, we see some oddities, but wow, this was one of the odder films
I will say that.
ever see. Yeah.
Really, all our movies could be this fun because a lot of them are a slog. And for me,
I thought this one was. I know that's fine. We can disagree. That makes the podcast more interesting, I think. But I found it
also, if we were doing rankings, I think maybe the only more problematic movie we've ever seen is Food Fight. I'm not sure if there's another movie that was there were as many times as I sort of gasped or involuntarily shuddered. There's a plot
Jade, our last movie was pretty problematic.
Ooh, Jade is pretty bad. Yeah. Jade is something.
Yeah, Jade was pretty bad.
Sadly, I missed both of those, so I can't chime in as the resident female.
Christy,
Jade would require that perspective in buckets.
I think
Jade is a really messed up movie. In the sexism department.
I think I remember being glad that we didn't subject you to Jade. So
yeah, Christy, your mental health may have benefited from.
All right, I'm glad I missed that one.
Yeah, it was. I did not know how. It's really something. For Jade, our previous episode available now.
What a selling game.
What a selling job I'm doing. Do you want to traumatize yourself? Listen to our previous episode.
Maybe I should listen to the podcast and do a podcast on
that. I do the podcast whilst bleeding. Yeah, I was giving blood. I was giving blood at the time.
Wait, really?
Jack was giving platelets.
Yep.
Jack really was.
The machine kept beeping during the podcast.
Oh my God.
We were trying to get Jack to talk about all the awful things that happened in this movie.
And then a room full of medical people.
Yeah, giving blood.
She must be the best sex worker. What?
Oh my God, I think I have to listen to it just for that. This is how we should be promoting it.
That is very fun. That was the best part of it.
Yeah. Sorry about that again. I'm sorry.
No, it was great.
That should be the one episode we released the video of.
That's true. If you could see Jack hooked up to the machine as we were talking about this, with like healthcare workers like around him as we're talking about the.
I mean, I think I have the video, so we could probably put it on YouTube or something.
I was gonna say, let's put a piece of it and put it up on social.
I have to do that.
Multitasking at its finest.
But we have to watch Legend of Bigfoot, and I will die on that hill. That movie is amazing.
That the new one, or is it the old?
Oh no, it's not new.
Okay.
It's a documentary about a gentleman named Ivan Marks who spent a portion of his life hunting for Bigfoot, but it's clearly like made up, and he's trying to make it sound like he's like a hero, an advocate for Bigfoot. It's amazing. And I think anyone should watch it.
Well,
are you Ivan, Jack?
I know.
Maybe.
I feel like that's what we're gonna.
And I'm very happy that Cody brought it up. Wait a minute, you made me watch that Bigfoot movie. Yeah.
We're gonna find out Jack.
I show that to many people, and it's
This is Jack's movie.
It is.
Too fun. All right. Well, we will be back soon with more crazy movies, more debate, and as always, rest in peace, Meat Loaf.
Mm-hmm.
See you here next time.